Good evening, everyone. I hope, first of all of you are safe with the current COVID-19 crisis. Depending on which part of the world you are in, I hope the lockdown has not been too bad for you. And most importantly, you're keeping yourself physically and mentally healthy. So before I get into today's session and introduce Dr. Ashwin, I want to quickly run through why we are doing what we are doing. So this Founders Talk series is brought to you by the Flame Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And the thinking behind this was there were so many webinars going on, but not a lot which were focused towards aspiring existing entrepreneurs or professionals who want to turn to entrepreneurship, right, or intrapreneurship. And so we try to bring together speakers who have been entrepreneurs, investors, intrapreneurs, educators who are doing something related to entrepreneurship and innovation, right? We had Dr. Arvind Chinsure, one of the innovation gurus, run through a fantastic session on last Wednesday. And next Wednesday, we have one of the most prolific angel investors, Sanjay Mehta, joining us for a session and share his thoughts around what you could do as an entrepreneur when it either comes to fundraising or scaling your startup. Now, coming to today's session, I want to quickly run through a poll. Anju, if you could just help me with a poll, just to get a quick understanding of how everyone is feeling right today. Physically, I think we are looking at coronavirus. Is it affecting me or not? But how do you feel about the extended lockdown, right? How are you feeling today? Are you feeling really low? I'm just about holding things well, or I'm having the best time of my life, So if you could just take a few seconds to answer this, I think this would be great. It will help set the context for the conversation as well. Now, while that is being done, I also want to make a quick announcement. The Flame Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation runs various initiatives for student entrepreneurs, early stage founders, and growth stage founders as well. In addition to an incubator and a startup accelerator program called the Flame Origins program, we've also launched a one-year postgraduate program in entrepreneurship and innovation, the admissions to which are open. And we've partnered with some great people, TiE Pune, Babson College, Wadhwani Foundation, Campus Fund. These are just some people. And then we've got fantastic advisors and mentors like Ashwin, who are there to mentor and guide as you try to build your business through the one-year program. So you can take a look at it. Now, today's session, right? So Anju, can you just publish the result? I couldn't see the results. Yeah, fantastic. So as expected, about 67 are saying I'm just about holding things well. We have 33% saying I'm having the best time of my life. Wow, that's really good. And 8% I'm feeling really low, right? And I think each percent over here matters. And let's kind of get to that as soon as possible. Thanks a lot, Anju, for this. So I want to make a quick introduction for today's speaker and the context. Okay, I think a lot of focus goes on physical health, not as much on the mental health, not as much on how do you build resilience, and what is resilience, right? And I'll leave Ashwin to share his thoughts on what is resilience and how do you build mental resilience. But founders, professionals, individuals are under a lot of stress, whether it is financial stress, whether it is physical health, worrying for your children, worrying for your adults. There's a lot of worry and a lot of stress, right? So how can we overcome that? How can we manage it? How can we keep it under control and still thrive, right? And if you are really low, then what needs to be done, right? What kind of help is available? So I think that's the conversation we want to have. Very quickly to introduce Ashwin Nayak, he's a serial entrepreneur in the healthcare space. He's on a mission to catalyze well-being and impact. He's very passionate about healthcare access and a strong advocate for primary health as the backbone of the healthcare systems worldwide. As an entrepreneur, he has started multiple healthcare organizations, whether it's Let's Talk, Mana Wellness, Vatsalya, Serenity, and We Scale Impact. He's also an investor and an advisor, and he leads Disrupt Health, which is an early stage healthcare accelerator program. He is also an author of 2 books, The Healthcare Game Changers and Change Starts Young. Now, that being said, I've known Ashwin for a couple of years now, and every time I meet, I learn something new from him. And it's always a fantastic session if you get time from him, and he's generally very generous with his time, right? So without further ado, Ashwin, maybe you could share your thoughts around today's topic, and then we can get into questions for the attendees. There is a Q&A box. We want to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you could put in any and all questions that you have about anything, right? Please use the Q&A button, and I'll bring those to Ashwin, and he'll be generous to share his thoughts. Ashwin, all yours. Thank you for joining.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Darshan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Darshan. Always a pleasure to talk to you and learn about all the amazing things that you are doing and also Flame University is doing. Very excited to learn about this one-year program that you have launched. I think there is a real need for such an intense program, particularly with the interaction with industry, like you mentioned. So when you first spoke to me about this topic, it's an interesting topic because clearly everybody has realized that resilience, mental well-being, and things like that have become even more important in these few months because of the sudden nature of this pandemic. Nobody was prepared. I don't think anybody in this world was prepared for this. But when you look at mental health, particularly in the context of startups and entrepreneurship, I want to tie it back to what you said about physical health. And every time I have to think about explaining how we look at mental health, I always go back to the same sort of concept, which is how do you think about physical health, right? So, and I'll pick an extreme example. I think most of us, if not all of us, have decided once in their lifetime to get a six-pack, right?
Yes.
Or to lose weight. And most of us have failed, right? But it's an ideal that you want, right? In terms of physical body. Similarly, for mental health, the ideal seems to be I want to be happy. Right? That's not the ideal situation if you think about it a little more. So I want to use the same analogy of how do you focus on a six-pack, on your abs, six-pack abs, and use the analogy to think about, for example, six-pack for your mind. So let me start with a few things that we already know about physical fitness, right? So we know that there are a few things that are fundamental to losing weight or getting a six-pack, which is one, you eat less than what you spend, right? That's the fundamental rule. Anything else is just add on to it, but that's the number one rule. Second one is you make sure that you have enough macros like proteins, carbs, and fats. There is no point in compensating one over the other. You have to have a right mix of all of these. The third one, we have to make sure that we train regularly. We do physical exercise. Fourth one, not many people do this, is to lift heavy weights, right? Lifting heavy weights has been known to provide the maximum benefit. So that's the fourth one. Fifth one is just having persistence and patience. And then last one is, I like to call it good genes. You have to make sure that all of this comes together with good genes. Now, if I look at this from the mental health perspective, using the same six sort of elements, I would say the first thing would be what do we consume on a daily basis, right? Whether it is information, whether it is inputs from our team, whether it is our focus on what we want to do for the next 6 months, 6 weeks, or 6 years, that kind of razor-sharp focus on what we consume is the single most factor, I would say. It's very easy when we start our companies to focus on too many things. We get distracted. Everything seems like a great idea. Today somebody gave me this idea. Let me go do this. I think it's okay to have your eye on the large market that you're possibly focusing, but focusing on some things and doing that well, I think there is a huge merit in that kind of approach. And we'll come back to that. The second one, which I find, is fundamental aspect of having resilience and better mental health is the ability or the support that you can get from your team. Building the right team with complementary skills, having all the elements, just like you spoke about macros, making sure that you have all the proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. You need people to do sales. You also need people to make sure systems are in place, etc. And I think the most important thing in today's age is to make sure that everybody is able to step up to their leadership. Many a times the founders, all of us are guilty of this. We hold decision making, we hold direction to ourselves, thinking that, oh, what will people think if I ask them to do this for me, or if I ask them to take up leadership? I think it's one of the fundamental shifts today that needs to happen is what is leadership? Leadership is not the position, right? Leadership is a mindset. Can we push that down to everybody? And can they step up and help us? And quite honestly, in today's time, we need all the help that we can get. Everybody has to step up. Sales are struggling, targets will not be met, funding will not come. All the things that we used to crib about in the startup world, multiplied by 100 times, right? So we need everybody to step up at this time. So building that macro team. Yesterday we were on a webinar with one of a leading counselor, and she gave a very nice overview. She said your team is made up of 3 types of teams. One is the pro team, the team which is an expert in whatever they do, right? It could be your sales guys, your coach, your whatever it is. That is the pro team. Then you have your inner circle, people you can trust, people who you can go to for questions and things like that. And then you have an extended team which can sort of support you when needed. So building different levels of teams for your organization will be very critical. So the third one, just building on the analogy of physical fitness, the third one is, I think you tweeted about this in a couple of days ago, which is the excerpt from the book from James Clear, which is you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall down to the level of your systems. Right? I think now it is more important than ever to make sure that we have systems in our organizations which sort of take care of things, right? Because today everything is an emergency. And being in that situation is not good for anybody's mental health. So at least having a level of systems, habits within the organization which can step up is very important. Now, taking the analogy of, let's say, lifting weights, so I would say learning as an organization, pushing the limits of an organization, not when the pandemic has hit, but as a regular practice, pushing the boundaries of what can the organization do is very important. Now, it's easy to say that, but if you look back at all our lives, we have all individually overcome some major roadblock or the other, right? Some of it is financial roadblocks, some of it is just challenges in your own lives, etc. And organizations are also like that. You will come across these impossible sort of challenges, but we'll all overcome. And I think not just for COVID, but across the life cycle of our startups, it would be important to be prepared by testing ourselves, by pushing ourselves, and be prepared for these kind of things. Like General Patton famously said, sweat more in peace, bleed less in war. So we have to make sure that we sweat more. So, the reason I'm saying this is, I'm going to come back to this, is building mental resilience is not an afterthought. Building mental resilience is core to how you build your team, how you build your organization, because this is required as we go along. And that brings me to the next point in terms of physical bodybuilding, physical fitness. The key is persistence and patience. Similarly here, right? Whatever the outcome of this pandemic, one thing is very clear: it will pass. it will end at some point, right? It's not today, tomorrow, 6 months, 1 year, it will end. And this is also not the last pandemic. More things like this will come. So we have to be prepared for the long haul. And if that is the outlook that we have from the very beginning, that we are in this as founders, as entrepreneurs, for the longer haul, it helps us to align everything to that. Day-to-day challenges, I 100% agree with you. Every day is the highest high and lowest low in entrepreneur's life, right? There's no other journey like this. But if we believe that things in the longer run will turn out to be good, I think the focus of the organization can stay on that. More importantly, that longer term vision will help us align the team towards that. Right? We can always go back to that anchor, that North Star that we have in the organization, and say, this is what we are in for. This is a temporary dip, and we will get to this. And last thing, one of the things that entrepreneurs generally ask me is, okay, this is all good, this is all theory, but we have tried all this, right? And I think I want to be the first, or not the first, maybe a few people who want to admit that there is also a huge element of luck. Let's not ignore that, we check box every single point and we'll end up with the goal. There is a huge amount of luck. And I think few years ago, there was a study which had come out by this famous guy from Idea Lab, Bill Gross, I think. And he had mapped 4 or 5 things that could go right in your entrepreneurial journey. And the number one thing was timing. The time at which you start your company, which is pure luck, right? Nobody can time the market, but that was one. So, these are some of the things, I think, drawing parallel from the physical world to the mental well-being. I also want to talk about 2 things which are, again, parallels from the physical world, but important here. One is injury, right? In the physical fitness world, there's a risk of injury. And in this also, I think as a founder, there is a huge risk of burnout. And it's very important to be cognizant of the fact that not only you are looking out for burnout in your team, but look out for burnout signs within yourself. Right? How do you recognize those signs? How do you make sure that you take that break? How do you make sure that you work with a professional if required? Just like if you're injured, you'll go to a professional. Make sure there is an opportunity, or you're open to going to a professional if needed. The second roadblock that we might all run into is you do everything, but nothing seems to happen. Right? I'm not able to raise money. I'm not able to do sales. Those things are fairly common. I remember when running Vatsalya, I had gone to I had made 46 pitches, 46 funding pitches. And this was the second round of investment. And we were very cocky because first time you raise some money, you realize, this business, everybody wants to come in. After raising money from an institutional investor, second time, 46 people said no. And the 47 said yes before even finishing the PowerPoint presentation. Right? Sometimes it's just that roadblock that keeps on coming and you have to go on. And I think in that case, working with somebody who's gone through that process earlier, whether it is a coach or a mentor or a buddy, is extremely important from a mental wellness point of view. So just to summarize, if you were to summarize all of this as resilience, one is to build mental health, mental well-being in your organization from very early on, making sure you have the right team that you can depend on and they can step up. The third one is, I would say, is making sure that you are prepared for these kind of events, if not business event, but some other kind of events. And lastly, making sure you have a network of people who can support you as mentors or coaches or buddies or whatever it is throughout your journey would be extremely important for founders, entrepreneurs alike. So I'll just pause here and maybe take a couple reactions from people, or if you have any questions, Darshan, happy to go into.
Sure. So we do have one question from Kiran Deshpande, and then I have few questions. Sure. But for the other attendees, please, this is supposed to be a conversation. Feel free to share more questions. Sure. Kiran says, I was a swimmer in my young age, and at my age of 57, I run a half marathon. Right. The current lockdown has made me feel junk. How do I overcome? Very
Kiran,
specific.
first of all, if you're running half marathon, you should be advising us. Right? Yeah, no, I think this is a real issue. The systems that we have built, for example, people who are heavily into physical fitness, right? Going to the gyms, working out, running. This has put a tremendous pressure on them because this is not the world they're used to, right? So quickly, like businesses had to adapt, now we have to adapt from a physical fitness point of view. So many people have turned to body weight exercises, working out at home, but it's not sustainable if you're used to that the other side. So I guess we'll have to wait for some time, Kiran, and figure out how to go and restart our physical activity. But I think the other thing that has worked well, and I'm no expert on physical fitness, but the other thing that has worked well for people is picking up parallel skills. If you are running, maybe you can. I've known people who have started picking up martial arts, which they can practice at home, using the same core skills to pick up another, activity has been useful. But we will look forward to maybe one day running together, or you guiding us on swimming.
Excellent. If I may just add, also on that really is looking at having a buddy and, working out together at the same time online, right? That has worked well. Many trainers have moved online, and physical fitness actually also helps on the mental health aspect of it, right? So both kind of work hand in hand. My trainer actually has been running at home during lockdown, which is another extreme, right? But it works for him, right? Running at house doesn't work for me. So whatever works for you, you try to pick that up and you work from there. You mentioned about burnout, and I think this is a very important part, which specifically in one of the teams at Adeption, what we are trying to do is we've got people around India, right? They've been working from home. There's a lot more meetings. There's a lot more housework. There is cooking. All in all, you get very little time for yourself and for reflection. Financial situation is such, or economy is such, that everyone needs to contribute more, so there is also a worry of being let go by the company, right? So you try to do a little bit more, and now you're talking about 3 months of going on all cylinders, right? So how does one know that I'm on the brink of burnout? And what are the things you said, mandated leave is something that we are considering in the team, right? So you have to take 1 day off every 3 weeks. That is one such things, right? So habits that we could put in as an organization or as a team. So first question is, how do you identify you're on the brink of burnout? And second, what are some of the examples that you've seen which can help reduce burnout, right? As an individual or as a team, however you would like to look at it.
Right. Yeah, so let me talk about two things. There are two questions here. One is, what signs do you look for in burnout? And second is, what can you do about it, right? So the first one is, burnout is something that doesn't present in dramatic ways. I think it's the small things that we have to look out for. The simplest thing would be to look out for how your reaction to things have changed. And what is the most common reaction? You are irritated, angry, frustrated. That's throughout the day you are feeling that. That's one obvious thing that people look out for. But I would pay attention to the second most important thing, which is the quality and duration of your sleep. If you were to track only one thing to check how burned out you are, just look at your sleep. Whether you're sleeping deep or your sleeping pattern has changed, or anything around your sleep would be an important factor. Third one is, watch your diet. See if you're gaining weight, losing weight. Any of those things are indicators that something is not right, in addition to the other things that I mentioned. Right? So if you keep track of these three things on your own would be important. Now, the other question is, you also have to keep track of who's getting burned out in your team, right? Which is the biggest challenge all of us have as entrepreneurs. You want to make sure that they're working, but you also don't want to stress them to the point that they get burned out. So one thing that people have suggested to us, and I like to share to you also, is don't wait for signals of burnout. Make it a regular practice to check in. Start every meeting with a pause and asking everybody, just like you said, how are you all feeling, right? The check-in will give an opportunity for people to say, the 3 people or 8% people that said today, I'm low, will already give you an idea that, okay, there's something in my organization, few people are not feeling okay, right? So making it a practice on a daily basis, doing the check-in would be a great idea to detect signs with your team. The third one is to make sure that we, in this time, we over-communicate with our teams. And when we say over-communicate, it's just not just the leader, but everybody in the system has to over-communicate. Between peers, up, down, all the way around. So creating those channels will be important. So that's the only way we will find out whether there is burnout. And the last part is to be sensitive that there are, like you really pointed out, there is family, there is home, there is not enough support. Making sure that people are able to manage that and asking them the question, is it okay if we do this? Is it okay? Will you be able to manage, blah, 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 is very important. Showing that empathy towards them will go a long way. Now, let's assume that we find out that somebody is burned. What are the things you could do? There are 3 things, right? The first one is, what can you do as an individual? I think the single biggest thing required today is empathy. The very fact that you are going to listen to somebody and say, what is the problem? Can I help you? Is itself a big deal. And not many people do that, right? We get so caught up with everything that that's not really on top of mind. Second is making sure that there is adequate support available within the organization. We spoke about the buddy system, having peers to step up, and support, creating that mechanism actively would be important. And lastly, the option to engage a professional who can help build the frameworks, help you with the tools that are important for individuals in your team to manage burnout. And the solution to this is fairly simple, right? It starts from counseling to exercise, like you mentioned, to meditation, to mindfulness. There's a whole bunch of things. But many of us have not been trained in any of this. Even physical fitness, our goal is thoda walking kar lo, thoda fast walking kar lo. That's it, right? Or run. But there are different elements needed if your goal is different. If you want to put on weight, there is a different way to do it. If you want to become lean, there is a different way to do it, right? So somebody has to build the framework and say, this is what you can do. And then you go ahead from there.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. You answered many of the questions that were coming through, but I want to take that one step further. Which is there is a stigma to going and asking for professional help, for executive coaching to a certain extent, for talking that I am in depression, right, or I'm feeling low, or just knowing what I am feeling. Even right. So these are all now various parameters that are kind of coming up. And Mano Wellness, would love to hear a little bit more about the genesis of Mano Wellness. We've got a question on that. And also, at what point should companies or individuals engage, and what should they be kind of expecting, right? If you could just speak a little bit about that, kind of bring that awareness a little bit more to the ground, without it feeling as though, oh, I am doing this, like when you go to the gym, you don't feel like, oh, I am doing this, right? There's not a lot of stigma to it.
Right.
But on the mental health side, this is what kind of comes up. So maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. Just the very fact that you mentioned about going to the gym, right? I don't think in the last 30 years anybody has gone to the gym and somebody saw him or her going to the gym and said, you are weak. There's no question, right? If you go to the gym, you're not weak. So the very fact that you go to a mental health professional doesn't mean that you are inferior in some way, right? Gym is to make sure that you are living a healthier life, healthier physical life. Similarly, going to a mental health professional is also that you can improve your mental capacity, build resilience, improve conditioning and things like that. However, having said that, it's not the truth today, and there is lots of reasons why it is not the truth, why it is not true, why there is so much stigma, and all that. I don't want to get into the stigma part, but I want to talk about how organizations can build capacity for mental health. I think there are multiple ways organizations can engage in building a healthy environment for their employees, but I think the most important thing is to start from the top. If the leaders can start saying that, I'm not feeling well, I'm not feeling great, my energy levels are low, I think I need help. For example, just to go back to your question, I personally benefited from coaching so much that I have said that that is the single biggest investment in my entire life. Not my education, not my background, not my entrepreneurial experience, but the very fact that I could work with a coach for 1.5 years really gave me the tools that I had not gotten earlier. And it was so powerful, then I had to then get my team also to go work with coaches, right? And the minute you start from there, it becomes very organic for people to say, yeah, it's okay, everybody. Even the best athlete in the world has a coach, right? The greatest athletes in the world have coach.
Right. I think just, with the cricket and football that is beginning to start around the world and especially UK, there's just a very big article that was published, I think a couple of days ago, saying most of the England cricket team folks need, professionals who can talk to the athletes so that, the 3 months of downtime,
Yes.
they're able to overcome that and then build their confidence again.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's the fundamental aspect, right? We have to, as a community, we have to start thinking about coaching as as a resource, as a tool that all of us have. Particularly if you're a leader, if you're a founder, every day is like I can't even explain. I think it's even not even possible to explain to others what is the situation, right? And I had written a post about 3 years ago about coaching, and in Kannada there is a saying which I'll translate. He said that a man will know what hardship is if you build your house or get your daughter married. Right? Those were supposed to be the biggest deal. I mean, in those days that was the big deal, right? Building a house and getting your daughter. I would add starting a company is in that league, right? You do it once and you just sucks the energy out of you. So to have the support system, and it doesn't have to be a professional. It can be a mentor network. It can be a support system that you guys have. Even during my own journey, we used to have 4 people who had nothing to do with each other's business. One was in sports, the other one is e-commerce, last one was in traditional printing industry. We used to meet regularly. Every month we used to meet. Just sit down and say, this is what is happening. My co-founder is not, cooperating. This is happening. I don't think I can make salaries next month. And everybody would say, yeah, I don't think I can make salaries next month. So how do you figure out, what to do next? So this kind of support system is extremely important. I don't want to overstress the importance of a professional. There is a space, but I think building blocks are available at multiple levels as well.
Excellent. And I think this is where many of the incubators, accelerators, even portfolio companies of investors, the benefit of an accelerator program like Disrupt or the Flame Origins program or GeoGen Next or Wadhwani Foundation really has been that
Right.
people who are in a particular stage who face similar problems, they are able to share their experiences. And we have one such question, a couple of questions. Maybe I'll ask this one. Runmai asked that, I've completed my MBBS. How important, according to you, is completing MD before getting into entrepreneurship? or am I too young? So maybe you could share some of your entrepreneurial experience of, when you started multiple times.
Well, the first thing is what you study, what degree you have really doesn't matter, right? All of us will have wasted one degree in our life. That's for sure. As long as soon as you become an entrepreneur, one degree is gone. But the rigor of going through that process, whether it is MBBS or MD, is very useful. And having gone through the same career path, I would say MBBS or any kind of medical field is extremely important, because this is one field where everything that you do involves teamwork. Everything that you involves empathy. And those two things are extremely crucial wherever you go, right? Whatever you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. So I would suggest that that's a good training base to start with. And the question of whether you should study more, be prepared. You will never be prepared fully for entrepreneurship, and you will never be not ready at any given time. So you can start at 13 or you can start at 30 or 60, whatever time frame is. But what I found particularly interesting and important and useful for me was not everybody has to be an entrepreneur. But the entrepreneurial thinking is very important, which means that while you're doing your MD or while you're doing your MBA or before you're doing your MBA, it's important to work with people in settings of environmental entrepreneurial nature. So working in a startup, working in a entrepreneurial NGO, or working in an entrepreneurial setting is extremely important. I think get a flavor of it before you decide to go into this, because this is a long haul. This is, one of my favorite sayings about this is the gangster rap line, which is, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And this will take a long, long time, right? Anything meaningful will take 10 years. So getting a flavor of that from an existing organization and realizing that, okay, this is something I can do for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years will be important to sort of have your view on.
I think just on that, we have another mentor called Prasanna Krishnamurthy, who runs a SaaS accelerator program called Opeka. He always says, don't look at what the upside is, right? Whenever you're thinking of a new initiative or a startup, you should judge or get into it by saying, am I okay with what are the downsides of it? Right? So am I okay with the lifestyle, which is going to come with lower income for the next maybe 3 or 5 years, of having the emotional lows and the emotional highs that are there, right? So am I going to be okay with what's the bottom, rather than, judging it by, am I going to be a billionaire? Am I going to be a millionaire? Am I going to, do this, right? So I think that is necessary. It's just that you should also be okay and cognizant of the downsides.
Yeah.
So,
have you seen this movie Sharabi?
Yes.
In our age, this was a big movie. In that movie, there is a nice line which is relevant to all of us founders. The movie, he's thrown out of his father's house and he doesn't have enough to drink. He's a drunkard, not have enough to drink. And he says one line. He says, "Aaj itni bhi nahi maikhane mein jitni hum chhod diya karte the paimane mein." Right? When you go to an entrepreneurial life, you don't have enough that you took for granted, but you have to be prepared for it.
All right. Here's Tarun Kohli. What are the ways to reduce anxieties due to uncertainties and new unexpected challenges coming up on an everyday basis? Because anxiety is also a big part which probably doesn't get discussed enough. So maybe you could share some of your thoughts on that, if this is okay.
Sure. So, anxiety manifests itself in various forms, right? It could be starting with your heart beating faster. It could be, other kinds of visible symptoms like getting anger, uncontrollable anger, or relationship issues, etc. But the important point is to realize that anxiety is natural in these situations. Anxiety and stress is what keeps us alive. Right? Anxiety and stress was designed to survive in the wild. we were designed to have this reaction so that if a tiger pounces on us, we know how to react, right? With all body functions getting ready for it. But now we don't have to worry about tigers pouncing on us, but we still have the anxiety and the stress reaction that we have today. So there are two things that I would suggest. One is to accept that there will be some amount of anxiety due to unusual situations. And pandemic is one. There are other non-pandemic issues, right? For example, funding getting delayed. Some key team member resigning at the crucial moment. One customer, 80% of your business is dependent on them, they leave, right? All these business-related issues also cause a lot of anxiety. So the thing is, how do you build anxiety coping mechanisms within the organizations and within yourself? And I'll only speak about yourself because the other one is business issue. I think there are two ways to deal with it. One is healthy habits to begin with so that we are prepared. So one approach is to be resilient towards these incidents. The other one is to find ways to recoil or restore yourself back when these things happen. Certain things like meditation, mindfulness, etc. help. But I would also suggest that when you are anxious, the first step is to acknowledge the anxiety. Making sure that you realize that, yes, this is happening with me. This is why I'm going through this. This is the reason I'm feeling this. Just having that moment to acknowledge your anxiety will go a long way to the next step. If you don't accept, and if you just say, I'm anxious, but just to sit back and reflect on what is causing this anxiety, what are the ways in which this is getting triggered will be the first step. And then obviously go to the tools that I mentioned, which is meditation, mindfulness, and also working with a coach or a professional would help. But the important thing is to start with acknowledging to yourself and to somebody who's close to you.
Excellent. I think that was fantastic. Now, different parts of the world, the lockdowns have been lifted. We are seeing live sports from UK. We are seeing many businesses in different parts like New Zealand, Australia, getting back to work, going back to the beaches. US is another ball game. But in India, we've pretty much been confined for almost 100 days now, right? And with another lockdown here in Pune for 10 days, and maybe even Bangalore and some of the other cities happening through, it takes its toll because humans anyway are social animals. And then Indians are much more, the culture is such that we are also very heavy on socializing, right? So what kind of problems do you anticipate coming up in the next maybe 100 to 180 days due to this extended lockdown? Because it's not easy, right? I mean, you can do this for a month, you can do it for 2 months. Now people are saying, well, I'm getting used to it, right? But at some point, is there going to be a point where this is going to kind of flip? People are going to flip and say, man, this is just too much now. Right. So what do you think, I mean, this is all we don't know for certain, but in your opinion, what do you think we should be looking out for?
Yeah, I think the challenge, as you said today, the challenge is not the virus. The challenge is not the pandemic. The challenge is really the unsurety of what is happening, right? The real problem today, the real issue today is, when will this end? It's not about, what is going to happen to my business, etc. We will figure out a way to that. I think the question is, and it is so troubling for all of us because we don't see the end. There's nobody telling us this is when it will end. And that's a fundamentally foreign concept for humans. We are used to being in control, and this is completely taken off controls for everybody. To your question, what are the mental health challenges this will have in the future? I think there's going to be a significant impact on everybody's well-being. But I would say 3 different segments are going to be impacted more severely than others. And this might be useful for us to keep in mind. One is elderly. As we are already seeing, there's so much panic, there's so much tension, particularly because most of the people across the world who have succumbed to this are elderly. And the reason it is important is because we all have elderly in our homes or in our families. So that's going to put a lot of pressure, particularly for your employees who are struggling with managing home, family, and then elder care. The second one is adolescents and young people who are either just finishing their education or entering the workforce for the first time. This is the worst period in history to graduate. This year, if you graduate with a degree, it doesn't matter which Ivy League college you went to. This is the worst time. Nobody's hiring. There's going to be tough times, right? So that section of the population is going to struggle a lot. So we have to be open and sort of acknowledge the fact that there will be challenges for that population. The third one is from a business perspective, small businesses. There's recent studies showing that about 40% of small businesses will shut down in India, right? SMEs. And that will have ripple impact for all of us, whether we are in the business of e-commerce or whether in the manufacturing sector. SMEs are the backbone of this country. So it will have impact on all of us. So these are three segments. And what it could lead to is sort of increased stress in terms of financial implication, increased stress in terms of mental health, anxiety, stress, and all that. But the only thing we can do right now is to acknowledge that it will be a long haul. Don't focus on the short term. Don't focus on the next 3 months. Look at what is the goal, what is the vision, and what we recommend from our side is prioritize a few things over the next year. Right? If you are in the business where you have just started, focus on 4 or 5 things that are in your control. Maybe sales is not in your control, but product development maybe is in your control. Maybe something else is not, fundraising is not in your control, but costs are in your control. So, things like that. So focus on 2 or 3 priorities that you can work over the next 3 to 5 months, and then reassess and then recalibrate. Instead of saying, I'm hoping that everything works out in the next 2-3 months and we'll come back to normal.
Yeah, I think even if we look back to the Spanish flu pandemic that took place in 1918, I was reading about it, and it took almost 26 months for 1/3 of global population to be infected. Yes. And then there were signs of, life coming back to normal. 26 months. Now, right. If that, we are only in month, 4 or 5 right now. Right. So I mean, that just gives you, from a timeline perspective, science might have developed, vaccines might be there, but it's a process. So right. Getting ready for the long haul is crucial, and right. Identifying priorities from your finance, from your mental health, physical health, universities, right? Business, everything needs to be looked at for sure for the next maybe 18 to 24 months. Right. Here's a question specifically to university, right? Tejashri says this: since we are dealing with young adults in a residential campus, how do you think we as a university can support a general well-being of our students? This might be a very specific one, but yeah. Any thoughts on this?
Sure. I think this is a real problem, and I'm glad that somebody who's in a university setting is thinking about it. There are 2 sort of angles to this. One is, what can the faculty or the administration do? And the second one is, what can the student bodies themselves do? And I want to differentiate these 2 because the students themselves can organize something for their community, which is very important, which is called the peer mentoring, peer support groups. Making sure that there is a space available for people to come to and talk to is extremely important. As you know, and I guess in a university setting, our biggest support system is other students. Right? We respect the teachers, but they are not our support system. The peers are the ones who probably we go to first, who can recognize signs. So the first thing I would recommend is creating this open space for young people to talk to each other. Second, as an administrator, is to help them with the tools. For example, young people need to learn the science of identifying distress in others. And there are courses that are available, making sure that those are available to your community of students. There are specific things on training young lay people on identifying signs of suicide. Right? People who have suicidal thoughts, they demonstrate some signs before they actually do something. So, identifying those signs itself is a good skill for young people to have. And these are all sort of triggers to people to say that our university or our organization cares about our well-being. And that also allows people to come out and talk to their peers and others more openly. Lastly, I would say a formal workshop or a webinar or a training program for the administrators to identify signs as well within community would be a good thing from the administration side.
Excellent. I think that was very detailed. Thanks a lot for that. We are about 5 minutes away and want to leave with some inspiration. And so this question by Sadashiv Nayak, I think is apt. You're doing some fantastic work on mental health. When and how did you get this calling for impact in this space? I'm very curious myself, but I think would love to hear your thoughts on, you've been there, you've done that, you've written books, you've already been a couple of times an entrepreneur, but still, how do you get the energy, the enthusiasm? What motivates you to launch this in this space, right? I would love to hear that.
Sure. So everything, which has been part of my entrepreneurial journey has been part of a problem that I have faced myself. Okay, whether my first sort of extended stint was Vatsalya Hospitals. I've grown up all my life in small towns. We lived for some years in Haryana, then Maharashtra, Karnataka. I've lived every place, and always it was a small town. So when I came back from the US in 2001, 2002, my parents were still living in a small town, and every year I used to come back. I had to take them to a hospital, to Bangalore or to Bombay and others. And then I realized a small town should have access to the same health facilities. And that was the genesis of Vatsalya. Now, similarly for mental health, there is a family reason why I did this. My mother was undiagnosed and underdiagnosed for bipolar disease for 10 years. And this was after I have qualified as a medical doctor. And just because she was living in a small town, the doctors could not identify. I was not trained enough to find out this was an issue. So it was always at the back of my mind that there is a huge gap, right? And we have to do something aggressively in this space. And luckily for us in the last 5 years, technology has enabled us to do much more by sort of leapfrogging the constraints of geography. So we can do at least 90% of the work in mental health space online like this, right? Video, audio, text. So that has been my entry in the mental health space. The second one is I also believe that going back to your initial question, how do we remove stigma? I think we have to remove stigma by not talking about it, but doing something. And how do you do something is having conversations like this in workplace, in offices, in colleges, with our friends about mental health and saying, this is important. Just like you go to the gym, and because you go to the gym, you're not weak. Going to a mental health professional does not make you weak or mad or crazy or whatever, right? So that kind of messaging we can do. So we have now sort of taken a very aggressive path that we will do 1 million affordable therapies over the next 3 years, because cost is also a constraint. So we are putting in pieces together over the next 3 years to hire people and offer this as a extremely affordable service that people from anywhere in the world can access. The second reason why I am very passionate about this area is mental health issues will be the single biggest public health problem in the next decade to come, particularly for young people. And we don't have the capacity right now to service that. So how do we build new models to take care of this issue? So those are the two reasons.
Awesome, fantastic. We have a lot more questions. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I don't think we'll be able to take them. We are at 5:57.
No.
Any conclusions, any summaries, any parting thoughts that you'd like to share in terms of what we discussed? That what should people be looking out for? How do we be more empathetic, right?
Right.
Anything that you would like to share? Would love to hear.
Sure. No, I don't think, I don't know enough to be sort of giving a mantra or something, but one thing for sure is anytime you are at a crossroads, anytime there is a question, there is a distress, you're under stress, step back and look at why you started on this journey, right? Just stepping back and saying, why did I start this company? Why did I start this course? Why did I start this new initiative? Is enough to sort of reset your emotions and focus on the long term, your North Star, your guiding force, or whatever it is. So just at times of distress, just step back and reflect back on why you got started. And then, hopefully that will make your journey a bit easier.
Excellent. Fantastic session. As usual, I learned a lot. There's a lot of thank you coming your way. Tarun Kohli says, thanks a lot for a wonderful session. For everyone who's here, thanks a lot for joining us on a Saturday evening. We have another fantastic session coming through on Wednesday. Mr. Sanjay Mehta, who was an early investor in Oyo and another 200 odd startups in India. He's going to share his thoughts as an investor, as an entrepreneur himself. So please register. This is open for all. Feel free to share it with anyone in your friend circle, family circle. Invite them in. If there are any speakers that you would like us to bring on this show, please let us know. You'll get the recording as well as a feedback form tomorrow. If you can just take a couple of minutes to give us feedback and share who you think we could bring in over here. I'll try my level best. Can't promise on delivering every single time, but I'll do what is there in my power to invite those speakers on this webinar series. Dr. Ashwin, thanks a lot again. Thank you for taking this time. Looking forward to hearing about the story of Mana Wellness and making the impact with the vision that you started. Right, I think we need it more than ever, and the timing couldn't have been any better. So thanks again. Thank you everyone for joining us, and yeah, see you on Wednesday.
Thank you, Darshan.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.